The terror wasn't in the middle of the night. It was the slow, chilling unraveling during the day. My son, Ethan, was always a happy, healthy child. Giggles echoed through the house, and his boundless energy wore me out in the best way possible. Then, he turned 3. It started subtly. He'd forget things he just learned, his vocabulary shrinking. Playtime became repetitive, then non-existent. Gone were the imaginative stories and pretend games. A vacant stare replaced his bright eyes. Doctors brushed it off as a developmental hiccup, but a mother's intuition nodded me. The nights were the worst. Sleep became a stranger. Ethan would stand by his crib, a low, guttural moan escaping his lips. His eyes, once full of life, were vacant black pools. He wouldn't respond to my touch, wouldn't react to his name. The test came back baffling. Nothing physically wrong. Specialists offered vague theories, but no answers. The fear became a constant, cold weight in my chest. My once vibrant son was a shell, his laughter replaced by that chilling moan. One afternoon, while rocking a silent Ethan, I noticed a book beneath his bed. It wasn't one we owned, a dark, leather-bound thing with an inscription I couldn't decipher. Inside, the pages were filled with symbols that twisted my gut. I felt a presence behind me, a cold wind that sent shivers down my spine. Ethan spoke, the first words in weeks. His voice, raspy and unfamiliar, spoke the inscription from the book. The room dipped in temperature, the air thick with an unseen force. Panic surged through me, a primal fear for my child, a primal fear for myself. I grabbed the book and raced outside, flinging it into the bonfire roaring in the backyard. The flames seemed to fight it, momentarily turning an unnatural green before consuming the book. As the last embers died, a choked gasp escaped Ethan. His eyes flickered, then refocused on me. A small smile played on his lips. "Mommy." He croaked, his voice weak but his own. The relief was overwhelming. Tears streamed down my face as I held him close. The horror wasn't gone, the memory forever etched in my soul. But in that moment, I had my son back, the weight lifting from my chest replaced by a fierce protectiveness. The true horror wasn't the unseen entity or the stolen words. It was the helplessness, the fear of losing a piece of my child, a fear I carry with me to this day. It's a reminder that the scariest monsters don't lurk in the shadows. They can take the innocent form of a child's vacant stare. Here's another true horror story, this time with a different kind of fear. The news reports called it a missing persons case, but I knew better. Sarah, my little girl, vanished from our own backyard one sunny afternoon. It was like she'd blinked out of existence. No footprints leading away, no struggle marks, just a single, abandoned doll in the sandbox. The police were kind, but their hope dwindled with each passing day. My husband, a mountain of a man, crumbled, days turned into weeks. The silence in our home becoming a suffocating entity. Sleep was a battlefield of nightmares, Sarah's laughter a cruel echo in my mind. Then, one night, I woke to a sound that sent chills down my spine. A soft giggle coming from Sarah's room. I fumbled for the light switch, fear of physical weight on my chest. The room was empty. But on the dusty floor, a single word, scrawled in what looked like dirty fingerprints, marred the innocence of her pink wallpaper. Mommy. The next night, it was a drawing. A crude picture of a stick figure family, but with Sarah crossed out. The fear morphed into a cold fury. I wasn't giving up. I started digging, questioning neighbors, revisiting the crime scene with a scrutiny that bordered on obsession. One day, a local woman, known for her eccentricities, mentioned seeing a strange car parked near the park the day Sarah went missing. It was a lawn shot, but I clung to it. The car was registered to an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The house reeked of dust and decay. Every floorboard creaked a sinister welcome. In the attic, I found a makeshift shrine. Sarah's doll, surrounded by photos and drawings, a twisted mockery of a child's room. But Sarah wasn't there. Then, from the basement, came a faint whimper. It was Sarah, Pale and thin, but alive, relief washed over me, choked by a wave of horror. The woman who owned the house stood in the doorway, a chilling smile on her face. "You found your little one," she said, her voice a sickly sweet rasp. "But what will you give in return?" The true horror wasn't the abduction, it was the revelation. This wasn't a random act, it was a twisted game with me as the pawn. Getting Sarah back was only the beginning. The fear wasn't just for my daughter's life anymore, but for the price I might have to pay to keep her safe. Escaping the house was just the first step in a new, terrifying reality. The scariest part wasn't the whispers, it was the silence that followed. My daughter, Lily, used to be a chatterbox. Stories flowed from her like a babbling brook, filling our little apartment with constant music. Then, at 6, the music stopped. It started subtly. A skipped word here, a forgotten story there. I brushed it off as starting school, the exhaustion of making new friends. But the silence grew, a chilling vacuum in our once lively home. One night, I woke to a blood-curdling scream. Rushing to Lily's room, I found her huddled under the covers, eyes wide with terror. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "There are voices. They're talking to me, but I can't understand them." The following days were a blur of doctor visits and tests. Everything came back normal. The specialists offered no explanation, leaving me feeling helpless and adrift in a sea of worrying. The whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. Lily became withdrawn, her bright eyes replaced by a haunting emptiness. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. The silence of the night amplifying the unseen voices in my daughter's head. One afternoon, while reading a bedtime story, a desperate attempt at normalcy, a low growl erupted from Lily's throat. Her eyes rolled back, her body contorting in an inhuman way. A voice, raspy and ancient, boomed from her small frame, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Primal terror flooded me. This wasn't whispers anymore, it was possession. Fear turned to a fierce protectiveness. I grabbed a nearby crucifix, a forgotten relic from my childhood. The moment it touched Lily's skin, the growl choked into a scream. The room filled with an oppressive energy, the air crackling with unseen fury. Lily collapsed, gasping for air. When she awoke, the emptiness was gone, replaced by confusion. The whispers, thankfully, were gone too. There were no answers, just a chilling silence and a lingering memory of the voice. The true horror wasn't the possession itself, it was the violation. The idea that something unseen could take over my daughter, use her voice for its own malevolent purposes. It was a constant fear, a shadow lurking just out of sight. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was a chilling reminder of what could return. A constant vigil against the unseen. The scariest part wasn't the illness itself, it was the chilling transformation. My son, Michael, was always a picture of health. But at 10, a persistent cough settled in, a relentless rasp that stole his energy and turned his once bright eyes dull. Doctors ran tests. Baffled by the cause, weeks bled into months, and Michael became a ghost of his former self. One night, the cough morphed into something guttural and human. Rushing to his room, I found him convulsing, his body contorted at unnatural angles. When the seizure subsided, a stranger stared back at me from Michael's pale face. His voice, when he spoke, was a low growl, the words twisted and unrecognizable. The specialists offered palliative care, whispering a prognosis I refused to hear, but a mother's love knows no bounds. I delved into forgotten medical journals, obscure research papers, anything that offered a glimmer of hope. Days turned into a desperate scramble. I procured strange herbs, brewed foul-smelling concoctions, all the while battling a growing sense of dread. Michael's body became a battleground, his once playful groans replaced by constant, tortured whimpers. Then, one night, under the sickly glow of a bedside lamp, I noticed a change. Michael's eyes, for a fleeting moment, held a flicker of recognition. "Mommy," he rasped, his voice weak but his own. Hope, a fragile flame, ignited in my chest, but the victory was short-lived. A monstrous growl erupted from his throat. A voice older than time filled the room. It spoke of ancient rituals, of a darkness clinging to Michael, a darkness that craved a return. The true horror wasn't the illness, it was the chilling realization. This wasn't a disease, it was something far more sinister. My son was a vessel, a pawn in a game I didn't understand. The fear wasn't just for his life, but for his soul. The story doesn't have a neat ending. Michael lingers, a shell of his former self, the battle raging within him. The doctors call it a coma, but I know better. Every night, I wait, a warrior at the bedside, ready to fight the unseen entity that threatens to steal my son away forever.